Slap! The sound of my father's hand connecting with my face echoed across the crowded backyard like a gunshot. 60 people, 60 pairs of eyes watching as I stood there, my cheek burning, my world crashing down. But what happened next? Sarah, my own sister, started clapping. Actually clapping. Way to go, Dad! Finally putting the barren waste in her place. Mom's laughter cut through the stunned silence like a knife. Give us the house. You have no kids to leave it to anyway. They had no idea that I'd been planning for this moment. One quiet phone call. That's all it would take. One call that would change everything they thought they knew about their worthless daughter. The Martinez family's 40th wedding anniversary party had started like a dream. Golden string lights twinkled overhead, casting a warm glow over our perfectly manicured backyard. I'd spent 3 weeks planning every detail, from the elegant white roses centerpieces to the catered spread that cost me 2 months' salary. 60 of our closest family and friends mingled on the freshly cut lawn, champagne glasses clinking, laughter floating through the evening air. "Rebecca, honey, this is absolutely beautiful," Mrs. Henderson from next door gushed as she admired the photo timeline I'd created spanning 4 decades of my parents' marriage. "You've always been such a thoughtful daughter." I smiled, adjusting the white tablecloth for the 100th time. At 35, I'd become the family's unofficial event coordinator, the one who remembered birthdays, organized holidays, and made sure everything looked picture perfect. David and Linda Martinez deserved this celebration. 40 years of marriage was no small feat. "Where's Sarah?" Dad asked, straightening his navy tie as he surveyed the gathering. "She should be here by now." "She's coming, Dad. Michael had to work late, but they'll be here soon." I checked my phone again, a familiar knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. Sarah Martinez Johnson, my 38-year-old sister, had a talent for showing up fashionably late and somehow still becoming the center of attention. Mom appeared at my elbow, her silver hair perfectly styled, wearing the blue dress I'd helped her pick out last week. "Rebecca, dear, make sure you get pictures of everyone. You know how important family photos are for posterity." Her emphasis on that last word felt loaded, but I pushed the feeling aside. The party was flowing beautifully until Sarah's red BMW pulled into the driveway. She emerged like a movie star, her blonde hair catching the light. Her husband, Michael, trailing behind with their twin boys, Jason and Tyler. At 8 years old, the twins were Sarah's greatest achievement and her favorite weapon. "Sorry we're late," Sarah called out, not sounding sorry at all. She made her way through the crowd, accepting hugs and compliments on her designer dress. When she reached our parents, she kissed them both dramatically. "Happy anniversary, you two lovebirds." "There's our girl," Dad beamed, wrapping Sarah in a hug that lasted just a beat too long. The kind of hug he used to give me when I was younger, before I became the family disappointment who couldn't produce grandchildren. As the evening progressed, I noticed Sarah steering conversations toward a particular topic. During dinner, as Uncle Bob was telling his usual war stories, she interrupted with a bright smile. "So, Mom, Dad, have you two thought about updating your will lately? I mean, with the boys getting older, it's important to think about the future." The casual way she dropped it made my blood run cold. Several guests looked uncomfortable, suddenly very interested in their dinner plates. "Sarah," I said quietly, "maybe this isn't the time." "Oh, come on, Rebecca. We're all adults here. It's a practical conversation." She turned back to our parents with that winning smile. "I just think it's important that the house stays in the family, you know. Goes to someone who can actually use it for its intended purpose. Someone with children who'll grow up there." The implication hung in the air like smoke. I felt heat rising in my cheeks, that familiar shame creeping up my throat. 5 years of fertility treatments, 5 years of hope and heartbreak, 5 years of Sarah's subtle comments about my failure as a woman. "The boys would love having a big backyard to play in," she continued, gesturing toward Jason and Tyler, who were indeed running around happily. "And Michael and I have been thinking about expanding our family, maybe even adopting. We just have so much love to give." Mom and Dad exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. "We'll think about it, sweetheart," Mom said, reaching over to squeeze Sarah's hand. I excused myself to check on the dessert table, my hands shaking as I rearranged the perfectly arranged petit fours. Mrs. Henderson appeared beside me, her expression sympathetic. "You know, dear, some of the most nurturing people I know don't have children of their own. You've been taking care of your parents for years. That counts for something." Her kindness made my throat tight. "Thank you, Mrs. Henderson. That means a lot." But as I watched Sarah work the room, effortlessly charming everyone with stories about the twins' latest achievements, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was watching my future slip away. The house where I'd grown up, where I'd nursed both parents through their health scares, where I'd sacrificed my own dreams to make sure they were comfortable, was it really going to go to Sarah just because she'd managed to have children? Later, as guests began filtering out, Sarah cornered me by the kitchen sink where I was washing dishes. "Great party, Becca. Really, you outdid yourself." She picked up a dish towel but didn't actually help. "I hope you weren't upset about the will conversation. I mean, you understand, right? Mom and Dad need to think practically. The house should go to someone who'll actually use it for a family." "I am family, Sarah." She laughed, that tinkling sound that had charmed everyone since we were kids. "Of course you are, but you know what I mean. Real family. Kids running around, Christmas mornings with grandchildren, that whole thing you can't really provide." The words hit like physical blows. I gripped the edge of the sink, watching soapy water swirl down the drain. "Besides," she continued, "you're so career-focused. You probably don't even want the responsibility of a big house. All that maintenance, property taxes. Much better for you to stay in that cute little apartment." That cute little apartment. The one-bedroom place I'd been renting for 3 years because I'd been sending money to help with Mom's medical bills instead of saving for a down payment. "Think about it practically," Sarah said, finally picking up a plate to dry. "What would you even do with 4 bedrooms? It would just be sad. Empty rooms that should be filled with children's laughter." I turned off the faucet and turned to face her. "I've been taking care of Mom and Dad for 10 years, Sarah. 10 years of doctor's appointments, grocery shopping, house maintenance. Where were you during Dad's heart surgery? During Mom's cancer scare? I have children to think about, Rebecca. Responsibilities you wouldn't understand." Her voice carried that patronizing tone she'd perfected over the years. "But that's exactly why the house should come to me. I understand what family really means." The next few weeks felt like walking through quicksand. Every family dinner became an opportunity for Sarah to drop hints about the future and what's best for everyone. She'd bring the twins over more often, letting them run through the house while making comments about how much they loved Grandma and Grandpa's big house. "Look how happy they are here," she'd say to our parents, watching Jason and Tyler play in the living room. This house was meant for children's laughter. Meanwhile, my own contributions became invisible. The yard work I did every weekend, the bills I helped pay, the midnight trips to the emergency room, none of it seemed to matter when weighed against the golden presence of grandchildren. I started having trouble sleeping. During the day, I'd find myself staring out my office window, wondering if I'd spent my entire adult life being the responsible daughter for nothing. Had I wasted my 30s caring for parents who saw me as a placeholder until the real family could take over? The breaking point came 3 weeks after the anniversary party. Dad called an impromptu family meeting, just the 4 of us, sitting around the same kitchen table where I'd done my homework as a child. "Your mother and I have been talking," he began, his voice formal in that way that meant he'd rehearsed this speech. "We've decided it's time to update our will." My heart hammered against my ribs. "We want to make sure the house goes to where it'll do the most good," Mom added, reaching across the table to take Sarah's hand, "where it can serve its purpose as a family home." "That's so wise," Sarah said, her voice dripping with false modesty. "I know this must be a difficult decision." Dad cleared his throat. "We've decided that Sarah should inherit the house. She has children to think about, a growing family. It just makes the most sense." The words hit me like a physical blow. I sat there, staring at my hands folded in my lap, trying to process what I was hearing. "What about Rebecca?" I heard myself ask, as if I were speaking about someone else. "Well, you'll get some money, of course," Mom said quickly. "We're not leaving you with nothing. But the house, well, you don't really need a house this size. You're doing fine on your own." Doing fine on your own. The phrase that had followed me through every family gathering, every holiday, every milestone where I showed up solo while Sarah arrived with her perfect little family in tow. "I see," I said quietly. "I hope you understand," Sarah said, her voice oozing with fake concern. "It's not personal, it's just practical. The house should go to someone who can fill it with the next generation of Martinezes." I looked around the kitchen where I'd shared countless meals, where I'd held Mom's hand during her chemotherapy, where I'd helped Dad relearn to walk after his stroke. Every corner held memories of my sacrifice, my devotion, my love. "Of course," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I understand completely." But I didn't understand, and I definitely wasn't going to just accept it. That night, alone in my apartment, I pulled out a box I hadn't touched in years. Inside were documents I'd kept from when Grandma Martinez had passed away 10 years ago. As the eldest granddaughter and the one who'd helped her through her final months, I'd been the one to handle her paperwork. Most people didn't know that Grandma Martinez had owned half of my parents' house. When she died, instead of selling her portion, she'd left it to be divided equally between her two granddaughters in a separate will that predated my parents' marriage. The house my parents thought they owned free and clear? They only owned 50%. The other 50% belonged to Sarah and me, equally. I'd never mentioned it because it seemed academic. We were all family. What did it matter who technically owned what? But now, as I stared at the faded legal documents, those percentages took on a very different meaning. My parents couldn't just leave their house to Sarah. Half of it wasn't even theirs to give. I spent the weekend reading and rereading those papers, making sure I understood exactly what they meant. By Monday morning, I had a plan. The family dinner where everything exploded happened on a Thursday evening in October. I'd been invited, or rather summoned, to what Mom called a family discussion. Sarah arrived with Michael and the twins, treating it like a celebration dinner. "We should toast," Sarah said, raising her wine glass. "To new beginnings and keeping the family together." I watched my parents beam at her, watched Michael nod approvingly, watched the twins color at the coffee table, completely oblivious to the adult drama unfolding around them. "Actually," I said, setting down my fork, "I have something to say about the house situation." "Rebecca," Mom warned, "we've already made our decision." "I know you have, but the thing is, you can't actually leave the entire house to Sarah." Dad's face darkened. "Excuse me?" I pulled out a folder I'd brought with me. "Grandma Martinez left Sarah and me equal shares in this house when she died. You only own 50%. The other 50% is split between Sarah and me." The silence that followed was deafening. "That's impossible," Sarah said, her voice sharp. "Grandma left everything to Mom and Dad." "She left her personal belongings to Mom and Dad, but the house ownership was handled separately. I have the paperwork right here." I spread the documents across the table. Dad snatched them up, his face growing redder as he read. "This is ridiculous," he said finally. "These papers are 10 years old. They don't mean anything now." "Actually, they mean everything. It means you can leave your 50% to whoever you want. But my 25%? That's mine. And if you want Sarah to have the whole house, she'll need to buy me out." I'd done the math. 25% of an $800,000 house was $200,000. Money Sarah and Michael definitely didn't have lying around. "You can't be serious," Sarah said, her perfect composure finally cracking. "You're going to force us to sell the family home over some technicality?" "I'm not forcing anything. I'm just clarifying what everyone actually owns." Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. "How dare you come into this house and threaten this family with some legal nonsense?" "It's not nonsense, Dad. It's the truth." "The truth?" His voice was rising now, drawing alarmed looks from Michael and the twins. "The truth is that you're a selfish, bitter woman who can't stand to see her sister happy." "David," Mom said quietly, but he was beyond hearing her. "You've been nothing but a burden to this family," he continued, his face purple with rage. "Always needy, always demanding attention, always making everything about you and your problems." I stood up slowly, my heart pounding. "I've been taking care of you and Mom for 10 years. I've sacrificed my own life to make sure you're both okay." "Sacrificed?" He laughed bitterly. "What sacrifice? You have nothing else going on. No husband, no children, no real life. Taking care of us is the only thing that gives your pathetic existence any meaning." The words hung in the air like poison. Around the table, I could see the shock on Michael's face, the way Mom had gone pale, the way Sarah was trying to hide a satisfied smirk. "Take it back," I said quietly. "Take what back? The truth?" "Take it back, or I'm leaving, and you'll never see me again." Dad stepped closer, his voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "You think you can threaten me? In my own house? You ungrateful little—" The slap came out of nowhere. His open palm connected with my left cheek with a crack that seemed to echo off the walls. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my face, tasting blood where my teeth had cut my lip. For a moment, everyone froze. Michael's mouth hung open. Mom gasped. The twins stopped coloring. Then Sarah started clapping, slow, deliberate claps that cut through the stunned silence like bullets. "Finally!" she said, standing up with a huge grin on her face. "Finally, someone put the barren waste in her place." Mom started laughing. Actually laughing. "Oh, Rebecca," she said through her giggles. "You should see your face. Maybe now you'll understand that this house is for people who can actually contribute to the family legacy." I stood there, my cheek burning, blood trickling from my lip, watching my family celebrate my humiliation in front of 60 people, because by now, the neighbors had heard the shouting and several were peeking over the fence. Mrs. Henderson stood in her backyard, her hand over her mouth in horror. "Get out," Dad said, his voice deadly calm now. "Get out of this house and don't come back until you're ready to apologize and accept reality." I looked around the room one more time, at Sarah, still smirking with satisfaction, at Mom, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes, at Dad, his chest heaving with righteous anger, at Michael, looking uncomfortable but saying nothing, at the twins, who'd gone back to their coloring as if nothing had happened. "Okay," I said quietly, picking up my purse and my folder of documents. "I'll go." As I walked toward the door, Sarah called out, "Don't forget to return your key. This isn't your house anymore." I turned back one last time. "You're right, Sarah. This isn't my house. It's our house. All of ours. I'll make sure you remember that." The drive home passed in a blur. I sat in my car outside my apartment building for 20 minutes, staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My left cheek was swollen, my lip split, my eyes red with unshed tears. But underneath the pain and humiliation, something else was growing, something cold and determined and absolutely furious. They thought they could just erase me, dismiss me as a barren waste who didn't matter because I couldn't produce grandchildren. They thought they could take everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed for, and give it to someone else because she'd managed to get pregnant. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the number I was looking for. James Wilson, the family attorney who'd handled Grandma Martinez's estate. He was probably retired by now, but maybe he could refer me to someone who specialized in property law. The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "Wilson and Associates." "Mr. Wilson? This is Rebecca Martinez. I need to talk to you about my grandmother's will." "Rebecca, I haven't heard from you in years. Is everything all right? You sound upset." I looked at myself in the mirror again, at the swelling on my face, at the determination in my eyes. "Everything's about to be perfect, Mr. Wilson. I need to know exactly what my legal rights are regarding the property on Maple Street. All of them. As I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I was already planning my next move. Sarah wanted a war over this house? She was about to get one. But first, I had a phone call to make. One quiet call that would change everything. The first thing I did when I got home was ice my face. The second thing was pour myself a glass of wine. The third thing was call James Wilson back and schedule an emergency meeting for the next morning. But that night, sitting alone in my apartment with a bag of frozen peas pressed against my swollen cheek, something fundamental shifted inside me. For 35 years, I'd been the good daughter, the one who called every Sunday, who remembered birthdays, who dropped everything when there was a crisis. I'd been so busy being grateful for scraps of affection that I'd never stopped to ask myself why I was grateful for scraps at all. I pulled out my laptop and started researching. Not just property law, but inheritance disputes, family dynamics, narcissistic family systems. What I found made my blood run cold and my resolve burn brighter. Everything I'd experienced, the gaslighting, the scapegoating, the financial manipulation, had names, clinical terms. I wasn't crazy or oversensitive. I was textbook. The pattern was crystal clear once I knew what to look for. Sarah was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the scapegoat, blamed for everything, valued only for what I could provide. And my parents? They weren't just playing favorites. They were running a systematic campaign to ensure I stayed in my place. Dr. Patricia Williams' article on family scapegoating was particularly illuminating. The scapegoat often contributes the most to the family while receiving the least recognition or benefit. They are simultaneously the most valuable and most expendable member. Most valuable and most expendable. The words hit me like a revelation. I started making lists. 10 years of contributions. Every medical bill I'd helped pay, totaling over $50,000. Every weekend spent doing yard work, home repairs, grocery shopping. Every holiday I'd organized, every crisis I'd managed. When I added it all up, the numbers were staggering. But more importantly, I started documenting everything. Screenshots of text messages where Sarah complained about having to deal with the old people. Bank records showing my financial contributions. Email threads about Dad's heart surgery where Sarah was nowhere to be found. I'd been keeping meticulous records without even realizing it. By 3 a.m, I had a file 2 inches thick. The meeting with James Wilson was everything I'd hoped for and more. At 78, he was technically retired, but his mind was sharp as ever. He listened to my story without interruption, occasionally making notes on a yellow legal pad. "Well," he said finally, leaning back in his chair, "your grandmother was a smart woman. She knew exactly what she was doing when she set up that trust." "Trust?" He smiled. "Rebecca, you don't just own 25% of that house. You own 25% of a trust that includes the house, the life insurance policies your grandparents had, and about $60,000 in bonds that have been accruing interest for 10 years. My jaw dropped. I had no idea. Your parents were supposed to inform you when you turned 30. The fact that they didn't. He shook his head grimly. That's a serious breach of fiduciary duty. I felt like the ground was shifting beneath my feet. What does this mean? It means, my dear, that you have significant legal leverage. And if your parents want to play hardball, we can show them exactly what hardball looks like. James recommended a colleague, Maria Santos, who specialized in family property disputes. By the end of the week, I had a lawyer, a strategy, and for the first time in years, I had hope. Maria was everything I needed, sharp, no nonsense, and completely unimpressed by sob stories. Your family has been financially abusing you for years, she said matter-of-factly during our first meeting. The question is, what do you want to do about it? I want what's rightfully mine. That's a start, but Rebecca, this is going to get ugly. Family litigation always does. Are you prepared for that? I thought about Sarah's triumphant clapping, about Mom's laughter, about the sting of Dad's hand across my face. Bring it on. The first step was having the property appraised. The second was serving formal notice that I was asserting my ownership rights. The third was informing my parents that they owed me $60,000 in bond dividends that should have been paid out over the past 5 years. I didn't have to wait long for their reaction. Sarah called first, her voice shrill with panic. "Rebecca, what the hell is this legal notice? You can't be serious about this." "I'm completely serious. This is insane. You're going to destroy this family over money?" The irony was breathtaking. "Sarah, you literally just tried to take my inheritance away from me. Don't talk to me about destroying the family." "That's different. We were thinking about what's best for everyone." "What's best for everyone or what's best for you?" The line went quiet for a moment. When Sarah spoke again, her voice had taken on that familiar manipulative tone. "Rebecca, I know you're hurt, and I'm sorry about what happened at dinner. Dad was out of line. But this legal thing, this is going too far. Can't we work this out as a family?" "We tried that. It ended with Dad hitting me in front of 60 people while you cheered." "I wasn't cheering. Sarah, I was there. I saw you clapping." Another pause. "Look, maybe we can arrange something. Maybe you could have the master bedroom when Mom and Dad are gone, and I'll take the rest of the house." I laughed, actually laughed. "You're still trying to negotiate as if you hold all the cards. Sarah, I own 25% of that house right now. Today. Not when Mom and Dad die, right now. If you want my share, you're going to have to buy me out at fair market value." "We don't have that kind of money." "Then I guess you have a problem." Dad's call came an hour later. No pleasantries, no apologies, just raw fury. "You vindictive little bitch! How dare you involve lawyers in family business?" "Hello to you too, Dad. This stops now. You drop this legal nonsense or you're out of this family permanently." "I'm already out of the family, remember? You made that pretty clear when you hit me." "I barely touched you. You're being dramatic as usual." "Barely touched me? Dad, I had a bruise for 2 weeks." "You probably bruise easily. Always been fragile." I closed my eyes, recognizing the gaslighting for what it was. "The legal papers stand. If you want to resolve this amicably, my lawyer's number is on the documents." "We'll fight this. We'll prove those papers are fake." "Go ahead. Waste your money on lawyers. The documents were filed with the county recorder's office 10 years ago. They're a matter of public record." The silence stretched on. Finally, Dad's voice came back, quieter but more menacing. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life." "Maybe, but it's my mistake to make." Over the next month, the battle lines were drawn. My parents hired their own lawyer, a pompous man named Richard Cross who specialized in intimidation tactics. Maria Santos was unimpressed. "He's all bluster," she told me after their first meeting. "Your case is airtight. He knows it, and he's hoping to scare you into backing down." But I wasn't backing down. If anything, I was gaining strength. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't worried about disappointing my family or managing their emotions. I was focused on one thing: justice. The discovery process was illuminating. We requested financial records, correspondence, anything related to the property. What we found was even worse than I'd imagined. Not only had my parents hidden my inheritance from me, they'd been using the rental income from the basement apartment, income that was partially mine, to fund Sarah's children's private school tuition. For 3 years, they'd been taking money that belonged to me and giving it to my sister's kids. "This is actually criminal," Maria told me. "We could press charges for theft." But I didn't want to put my elderly parents in jail. I just wanted what was mine. The mediation session was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in December. I arrived with Maria, wearing my best business suit and carrying a briefcase full of documentation. My parents arrived with Richard Cross and Sarah, who looked like she hadn't slept in weeks. "Oh, let's try to keep this civil," the mediator said, a calm woman named Judge Patricia Morrison. "We're here to find a solution that works for everyone." Richard Cross launched into an immediate attack. "Your Honor, this is clearly a case of a bitter, childless woman trying to extort money from her aging parents. These supposed inheritance documents are questionable at best." "They're not questionable," Maria interrupted smoothly, sliding a thick folder across the table. They're county-recorded legal documents witnessed and notarized. We also have evidence that Mr. and Mrs. Martinez have been systematically hiding assets from Ms. Martinez for over 5 years. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents for what felt like an eternity. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Cross, I have to say, these documents appear to be completely legitimate. Your clients have been in violation of trust law for several years. Now wait just a minute. Dad started. Mr. Martinez! Judge Morrison's voice was firm. You were legally obligated to inform your daughter of her inheritance when she reached the age specified in the trust. The fact that you didn't, combined with your use of trust income for other purposes, puts you in a very precarious legal position. I watched the color drain from Dad's face. Beside him, Mom was clutching Sarah's hand like a lifeline. What's the bottom line here? Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Judge Morrison consulted her notes. Ms. Martinez owns 25% of the property, which at current market value is approximately $200,000. She's also owed 5 years of rental income and bond dividends, which amounts to approximately $43,000. Your family owes her a total of $243,000. The silence in the room was deafening. We don't have that kind of money, Mom said finally, tears starting to fall. Then you have 2 options, Maria said calmly. You can sell the house and pay Ms. Martinez her share, or you can arrange a payment plan, but either way, she's getting what she's legally owed. This is insane, Sarah exploded. Rebecca, you're going to force us to sell the family home. Where are Mom and Dad supposed to live? For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I felt a flicker of doubt. These were my parents, the people who raised me, fed me, loved me, even if that love came with conditions. Was I really going to make them homeless? But then I remembered the slap, the laughter, Sarah clapping while I stood there bleeding. That's not my problem to solve, I said quietly. You should have thought about that before you decided I didn't deserve what Grandma left me. Richard Cross tried one more desperate gambit. Ms. Martinez, surely we can work out some kind of arrangement. Perhaps you could maintain your ownership percentage but allow your parents to remain in the home until they pass away? No. The word came out stronger than I felt. I'm done being the family's unpaid caretaker. I'm done sacrificing my future for people who see me as disposable. Judge Morrison nodded approvingly. Ms. Martinez has every right to demand immediate payment or force a sale. Frankly, she's being more generous than she needs to be by even coming to mediation. The final terms were both simple and devastating. My family had 90 days to pay me $243,000, or the house would be sold and I'd receive my percentage of the proceeds. There would be no payment plan, no special arrangements, no family discount. As we filed out of the conference room, Sarah grabbed my arm. Rebecca, please, think about what you're doing. This is our childhood home. This is where Mom and Dad want to spend their final years. I looked at her hand on my arm, then met her eyes. Sarah, where did you think I wanted to spend my life? In that tiny apartment, sending you guys money while you built your perfect family in the house that's partially mine. That's different. It's not different. It's exactly the same. You just never bothered to see it that way. I gently removed her hand from my arm and walked away. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of activity. My parents tried everything. Guilt trips, promises of future reconciliation, even having the twins call me crying. But I'd learned to recognize manipulation for what it was, and I wasn't falling for it anymore. When the 90 days were up, the house went on the market. It sold within 2 weeks for $850,000, $50,000 more than we'd estimated. My share came to $212,500, plus the $43,000 in back payments. $255,500, more money than I'd ever seen in my life. But the money wasn't the real victory. The real victory was the day I got the call from Maria. It's done, she said. The check cleared. You're officially free. Free. It was a word I'd never associated with family before. I used the money as a down payment on a beautiful 2-bedroom house across town. It had a garden I could tend without permission, a guest room I could use however I wanted, and most importantly, It was mine. Completely, legally, undeniably mine. The first person I invited over was Mrs. Henderson, my parents' former neighbor who'd witnessed the whole ugly scene. She arrived with a casserole and a bottle of wine. "I'm so proud of you, dear," she said as we sat in my new kitchen. "What you did took incredible courage." It didn't feel courageous. It felt like survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. 3 months later, I got an unexpected visitor. Sarah showed up at my door on a rainy Thursday evening, looking older and more tired than I'd ever seen her. "Can I come in?" she asked. I hesitated, then stepped aside. We sat in my living room, the silence stretching between us. "Mom and Dad are living in a senior community now," she said finally. "A nice one, but it's an adjustment." "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you? Really?" I considered the question. "I'm sorry they're struggling. I'm not sorry they're facing consequences for their choices." Sarah nodded slowly. "The twins ask about you sometimes. They don't understand why Aunt Rebecca doesn't come around anymore." "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That grown-ups sometimes make mistakes that hurt the people they love." We sat in silence for a few more minutes. Finally, Sarah looked around my house, at the pictures I'd hung, the plants I'd arranged, the life I'd built. "You seem different," she said. "Stronger. I feel different. I came here to ask if there's any way we could—" She struggled for the words. "If there's any way back from this." I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The golden child who'd never had to fight for anything, who'd assumed her place in the world was secure simply because she existed. For the first time, I saw her clearly. Not as my successful older sister, but as a scared woman who'd just realized that her safety net had been someone else's sacrifice. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't know if there's a way back to the family we were, but maybe there's a way forward to something different." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Rebecca. I'm sorry for all of it. The things I said, the way I treated you, the way I just assumed I deserved more than you did." It was the first real apology I'd ever gotten from her. "I'm sorry too," I said. "I'm sorry it took all of this for us to have an honest conversation." She stayed for another hour. We didn't solve everything. There was too much hurt, too much history for that. But we talked, really talked, about the family dynamics we'd grown up in, about the roles we'd been assigned, about the damage we'd done to each other. When she left, I wasn't sure if I'd see her again. But for the first time in years, I was okay with that uncertainty. I'd learned something crucial over the past 6 months. My worth wasn't determined by whether other people valued me. It wasn't dependent on their approval or their love or their acknowledgement. I was valuable because I existed, because I'd chosen to fight for myself when no one else would, because I'd refused to accept scraps when I deserved a seat at the table. 6 months later, I got a text from an unknown number. "This is Jason. Mom gave me your number. Tyler and I miss you. Can we come see your new house sometime?" I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I'd like that. Ask your mom to call me and we'll figure something out." Because here's what I'd learned. Cutting toxic people out of your life doesn't make you cruel. Setting boundaries doesn't make you selfish. And demanding to be treated with basic respect doesn't make you a vindictive bitch. It makes you someone who understands their own worth. That quiet phone call I'd made sitting in my car that night, bruised and bleeding and angrier than I'd ever been, had changed everything. Not just for me, but for my entire family. It forced all of us to confront truths we'd been avoiding for decades. Some families stay together because they love each other unconditionally. Others stay together because they're too afraid to face the truth about what they really are. My family fell into the second category, and that phone call had been the light that illuminated all our dark corners. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Would I do it again? In a heartbeat. Because sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is refuse to enable their dysfunction. Sometimes the greatest gift you can give yourself is the courage to walk away from people who don't value you, even if those people raised you. That little apartment I'd been renting, I kept it for 3 months after buying my house, just in case I got scared and wanted to go back to being small and grateful and invisible. But I never needed it. Because once you remember who you are, once you refuse to accept less than you deserve, there's no going back to being a shadow of yourself. And that, more than any house or inheritance or family reconciliation, was the real victory. The barren waste? She just proved she was anything but wasteful. She was valuable, powerful, and completely done apologizing for taking up space in the world.